Bonjour, Roxane.
Bonjour.
So
I'm back.
Celia's away this week?
Yes, she's traveling home today from a vacation. So she forgot about the meeting, or, yeah. Her plans had a last minute change. So anyways, she sent her regrets.
All right. I'm going to tape the presentation so that way, because I know Car is also not going to make it. She's away.
Yes, I saw her email about being at a workshops today.
Not sure about Mike. Let me see if she's around.
That's great if you can tape it.
Yep. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Mikey.
Hey.
Welcome.
Sorry?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Anne, can you hear? Est-ce que tu nous entends? Anne?
Oui, je vous entends.
I'm going to mute myself just because I am in the office.
Okay.
So people might be talking in the background.
So I think this is everyone who's going to be here today. Anders, are you there?
Hello, hi.
Hi. There's a few people that are on holiday or can't make it today. So what we do, we're going to try recording the presentation, and then they'll have it available when they come back. So this Musa is usually our convener, and he's away in Africa today. And so my name is Alexandra, and I'm going to be convening. I mean, everybody knows me, but today we have a very interesting presentation from a group that I had met in Vancouver when we went there to meet the other PHAC groups. This isn't actually a PHAC project, but the organization in Winnipeg, Green Action Center, has a project with CLASP in similar participatory planning, and they developed this really cool app that Anders is going to present to us. Does anyone have any questions?
No? Sounds wonderful.
Okay, go ahead, Anders. And maybe you can introduce yourself as well.
Hello. So, yeah, it's a cool app. Hopefully, you think so. I'll sort of introduce it like this. I've been working with Green Action Center, which has had a class project to do school travel planning. So it's everything that I'm going to talk about today is sort of coming at the world from a perspective of say a 10-year-old kid. That's where it started. So you'll notice in some of the graphics and some of the ease of use and things like that that the things that we're developing are mainly for quote-unquote school travel planning. Green Action Center has an Active and Safe Routes to School program sort of division that has been doing this for about 8 to 10 years or so. And in the beginning, sort of fumbling around in the dark, figuring out what to do, and just getting the process started. As you probably all know, traffic is not planned for children primarily in Canada, and so they started looking at ways of sort of analyzing this and making school travel plans and stuff. I'm sure you're somewhat at least familiar with this process. It's not too hard or complicated, but it basically involves going into a school and talking to people and getting people together and trying to figure out what you can do with varying levels of interest, enthusiasm from the municipality, etc., and the people who can actually make it happen. And then you ideally monitor this and get an idea of whether or not the kids are, what they're doing, whether they're walking, getting dropped off by their parents in a car or what. And then figuring out things that you can do or things that the surrounding area can do. So, and everybody's got different things that they can do, obviously. The janitor can put in a bike rack, and maybe the town or the city or the mayor could put in a protected bike lane if they want to get biking going or slowing down traffic or stuff like that. So that's the kind of petri dish that this came out of. What I think is special about this particular project was that we made it for you. So specifically for, so Alexandra gave me a little bit of a lowdown on what you folks are doing. And when I say you, I mean everybody. And I mean anyone who's at all interested in talking to an engineer or a planner on their own level. And that includes the grade 5 geography class. So, I guess rather than going too much into it, I think I'll maybe start right away into the two tools that I'm going to present to you guys. I think both of them are super valuable for what you're doing, and I think both of them would leave sort of a lasting legacy of letting the people who want to continue on once you folks are done your projects, at least monitoring the situation, allow them to continue on doing so. Both of the tools that I'm going to share are aimed at sort of giving the public the ability to figure out what's going on their street or in their area, using two different sort of very specific slices of the population. In one case, it's an actual geographic slice. So Counterpoint is for doing screen line traffic counting. Is anybody not familiar with that? What that means? Okay, great. And then Bike Walk Roll is to replace the hands up surveys that are done as part of school travel planning. So this happens across the country too, where for example, Green Communities Canada, University of Toronto, and us and a bunch of people across Canada did a bunch of hands up surveys, I think a couple of years ago, and calculated the data to get an idea of how many kids were walking or biking to school in Canada. This is the Bike Walk Roll project is to make it fun and gamified a little bit, and to get people to do it often, and to have people compete and be able to see what other people's scores are immediately. I still don't even know what most schools around the country, and that was done years ago. The other thing that I guess guides these two tools is the idea that if Pixar didn't happen, in the sense that now that we're living in an information overload age, if you're not on the internet, you don't exist. And I think that's particularly true for younger people. To take advantage of the fact that everybody has a computer in their pocket and everybody knows that it's more computing power than they took to land on the moon. They got it in their pocket, and so the idea that we're sort of struggling with old ways of doing things is kind of silly when we know we're in a kind of a field that needs to play a lot of catch up with the traditional automobile planning sort of industry. Okay, so I'm going to go into it. I'm going to go through this first presentation relatively quickly because it was made to sort of introduce the whole idea, and you'll see it's a bit old too. So, but feel free to stop or put a hands up or say hey in that chat box, or to turn your mic on and just interrupt me or ask anything. And if I'm going too quickly or anything, let me know. So a little bit about traffic counting. Now, I understand some of you are doing traffic counting. I'm curious how you're doing the traffic counting, if you're using something standardized or if you're using pen and paper or what. But generally speaking, traffic counting in 2015 now is, and I think this is pretty fair to say, is this. And you're probably having to catch up with jurisdictions and areas that have pretty much exclusively been counting this and not counting this. In this case, I think most of you are working, so you're not volunteers. But like I know, for example, I'm doing this presentation from Winnipeg right now, and here all of our bike counts for the last sort of 6 years were organized by this guy named Jeremy. Nice guy. Happens to have a statistical analysis company, and he does the results, so it's more professional than a lot of other places. But in generally speaking, it's volunteers who have been doing the bike counts citywide, for example, and they've been doing them on paper, using a clipboard and a pen. So these two things sort of add up to the fact that we know tons about cars, but almost nothing about pedestrians. And one of those reasons is that if any of you have done any counting before, you'll realize this, but is that there's a surprising amount of pedestrians out there, and I don't know why it is surprising, but I think it's surprising because cars are so easy to detect. They're noisy, they're fast, they're big, they overwhelm you in the landscape. But once you sit down to actually find a method to count the pedestrians too, especially, and bikes, it can be a surprising amount of people that are already out there. The only problem is that the automated counters, compared to, say, this one, for pedestrians don't actually work very well. And I can back that up by, I was in the place to have been talking about that, I think, because I was at Walk 21 in Sydney back in October, where people from around the world who are specialized in this, and that was sort of the general opinion, was that these don't work super awesome. And they're close, but they're still a robot. And so this will come back to the participatory planning process and why it's important. I don't think any robot, just because that robot is learning something, in the end, you at least have some human that needs to be learning something about something. And so even if this worked perfectly, it's still missing one key component. Anyway, so here's another word just about automated counters that exist for bikes. They exist. They're a little bit rare and expensive. They're awesome. Talk to eCounter if you want to buy one. But in the meantime, none of this stuff is going to show up in any of the places where you and I are working. So again, if you think back to the fact that we're focusing on school X in suburb X of Canadian Prairie City X, who cares enough to put in a $10,000 eco counter in front of that school? Nobody cares. So we need to find a different way. One way would be do it on paper. Another one is this app we developed. So generally speaking, this is our current status for pedestrian and cycling data collection, I would say, or maybe at this level. So this is actually much more sophisticated than we have, and this is for counting in Bangladesh. We know that good data is important, so this is what we're going to do. We did notice that teams of kids are super keen on working on this stuff, so and they're actually really good at it. They're super detail oriented. Excuse me. You can't necessarily get them to do a cost-benefit analysis of the street change in front of you, but you can get little kids to count traffic. So we thought, well, if little kids can do it, we sort of approached this project in the same way that the American president approaches his speeches, which is to write everything for a grade 5 level so everybody can understand it. And then if you do that, then you know that you're hitting as many people as possible. And we also know that people are wasting a lot of time on these things, doing stupid things like trying to knock over like little round pigs with little round birds for 3 yellow stars that blink, and they will spend hours and hours doing that. And we thought, well, if we give them a tool to be able to count traffic, maybe they would, be willing to do something about it or use it as part of projects. So we're using crowdsourcing is the main thing, but you don't have to use crowdsourcing. You can use it however you like. And here's how it works. Is everybody still with me there?
Yep.
Okay, great. Basically, you have a smartphone in your pocket, you go somewhere. So this is nearby my place, actually, that picture. It's on a street called, what is that street? Mostyn, in West Broadway in Winnipeg. You can see it on a map, you find your place. What you're doing is you're making an imaginary line across the street, and whenever certain type of traffic crosses your line, you count it. Very simple. So you count everything, like on the far sidewalk, the cars, the pedestrians. And that's actually an interesting one. Most pedestrian counts, bike counts, car counts, they usually don't capture all kinds of traffic at the same time. And I think it's actually very relevant when you do. And I would suggest just do some counts and you'll realize why I think yourself. I could go into it, but just from having done lots of counts around the world in different places, super interesting when you count all traffic at the same time. Anyway, you get the results right away when you do a count. So this is an actual count on that street on a sort of a random Sunday. I don't think anybody in Winnipeg would ever guess anywhere near that there is 20% pedestrians or 20% cyclists on that street, but there is. I didn't even guess that, and I know it's a busy biking street. I went there specifically to count that, and I had no idea that it would be that high, actually. We're not Copenhagen. You can do easy counts and regular counts. So, and this is part of the gamified thing. So we're actually going to go into even more depth here, and we're actively seeking more funding to build other pieces. We're going to do a Kickstarter. That's my little plug. And if anybody has any money and they want to throw out Green Action Center on us to build more pieces, by all means do so. But these are the 2 pieces we've got built right now, and that's a regular and an easy count. The regular count is actually really, really tricky if you're somewhere busy, and it's pretty fun. If you're going to do it for, say, 2 hours straight, you can have nightmares kind of at night. If you've ever played Super Mario Brothers for hours and hours on end, trying to beat a certain level, and you wake up sort of jumping on mushrooms, then you know kind of how that feels. But it's really, really useful to do the regular count, especially in places that aren't so busy, because then it's actually quite easy in order to get an idea of, for example, some of the more vulnerable users that are using a street. So you'll notice that we differentiate between adults and children on bikes. That's because, well, if you're near a school, it might be something useful to know. And it's actually useful to know just about anywhere. So I've recently done counts in downtown Tilburg, Netherlands, in Copenhagen, Denmark, and it's really interesting to see the number of kids that are moving around an urban area. It's quite it's kind of a canary in the mine, I think. Anyway, but so those things are all worth counting. You'll notice that you can do the regular count, even if you mess up, you're not sure is that teenager, an adult, or a child, whatever. It's not super important because they're all adding up to the 4 categories that, for example, the Ministry of Transportation Ontario, the Ministry of Highways in Saskatchewan, they're all going to count it the same way in these 4 categories. So the heavy vehicles, the regular vehicles, pedestrians, and bikes. If you're lucky, they count pedestrian bikes. And I've seen their forms and stuff. Usually they don't. But anyway, those 4 categories are kind of the ones that mainly count. In these regular account stuff, if you're wanting to, for example, put in a crosswalk somewhere for warrants, having a child walking or an adult walking or a stroller actually counts as 2 in order to multiply the effect of those people being around in order for the decision for a traffic engineer to put in a. It's complicated, but basically that stuff is important for all kinds of reasons. And you can do different types of counts all at the same location. Oh, I forgot, we also have a carpooling count, which came out of a request from somebody at Texas A&M University. He was doing a sort of PhD class or something, and or he was doing his PhD, and he was getting a whole bunch of people to do it to help him on figuring out how many people were traveling in individual cars on different streets. And so he asked if we could quickly make a carpooling one, so we did. So you can also go to the same location, and for every car that goes by, say if there's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 more passengers, and get an idea of how many trips are actually being made. But anyway, that's not as fun as the biking and walking stuff. You can take into account weather, construction, special events, whether it's icy on the ground or what, if you want, and analyze it later. I actually don't think it matters, so I also am a kind of a policy expert in something called winter biking. Statistically speaking, I think you can just forget about weather in general for any type of transportation. It really doesn't matter. It only comes down to how well the local area plans for things, and it's mostly about vehicle operating speed, in my opinion. But anyway, we put these little expansion factors in here in case anybody ever wanted to go through the data and look at it later. They could also do the same thing with weather data that's being collected automatically. But anyway, not super important. The key is that number, and what you can do with that number, I think, and what it does to the people who are watching and doing the counts, and sort of how you can use it as justification for any work you've done before and after. And so because it's gamified and aimed for like grade 5 kids, we've got little things that pop up, and I'm kind of in this little battle with my little brother who helped doing the iOS programming. But I promise this is not from being working on the project, but we're a little bit addicted to catching these badges before the other person does, and we send it to each other and say, haha, like, and that I've already seen happening also on Twitter, on our Twitter account. Other people are, at one point there's a bug because you couldn't connect to Facebook, and she was upset that she couldn't get the Facebook badge and it wasn't fair, and da-da. Anyway, so that stuff surprisingly works. So you might even get some of your counters going and repeating counts, and just for out of boredom's sake at a bus stop nearby. You can see all the history results over time, and this is what's really awesome, is that you can create your own, so you don't have to be hemmed in by somebody else's idea of what needs to be counted. You collect your points, you can join a team, and you can download the data from any counterpoint. So this is where the idea of collecting on paper is kind of, though it's silly now, because if you think of all the work that it takes to get people to forums and stuff, most people have a smartphone. And actually the iOS version is a much better of our program right now. So I would suggest sticking to iOS actually if you're going to do a campaign, because we have some data sync issues between the web app and the iOS version, which we're working on. But anyway, so and what I mean by that is the counts that are done on a certain platform are only visible in that platform to download the data, so you kind of have to put them together manually, which is kind of annoying. But aside from that one little annoying piece, this works super well, and you just get this spreadsheet in CSV format that has all of the things down to the minute, timestamped, all the categories it needs to be in. You're basically collecting 10 times as much information, and it's taking you 10 times less time to input it, because it eventually needs to go into a spreadsheet somehow. So you can go crazy, whatever. You turn that into a graph if you want. But I really think that the main thing is this, and I'll just show you something else for a second. So this is our Twitter account, just to give you an idea. So these are all the counterpoints that exist around the University of Manitoba. This is because they're doing this big planning exercise, similar to what you folks are doing. Sounds like site-specific, given neighborhood-based, proposing projects, but they're trying to get a before picture, and they're trying to get students involved in figuring out what's actually going on out there. Manitoba is a really good example because it's a really suburban campus. People think that it's everybody driving in a pickup truck to get there, and the reality is actually not. It's not that. There's a lot of pedestrian activity on campus, and then there's a lot of people, especially biking to campus, which is sort of blew my mind, and a lot of people taking transit. So the actual sort of driving share to the campus is, I think it's 40%, and I think most people would assume it's 80. Anyway, so the more data that's around that, so that's happening. So people, sharing stuff. This is some people doing it in Adelaide, or not Adelaide, Canberra. Anyways, so the conversations that happen here. This is a count that I did a few days ago in Copenhagen, showing like 602 pedestrians an hour, or per 10 minutes, 3,600 pedestrians an hour on a pedestrian mall. Just gives an idea of. So anyways, it's really important to have these conversations happening in public. So I'll go back to this thing again. Because once you do that, then it takes it out of the hands of the experts, and I think one of the first things when we first did Twitter integration with the app, the first thing I did is I tweeted the mayor of Adelaide, because I was there for a conference to present this work, and I said, because he was talking about some protected bike lane that they put in, and it was controversial, and how he was going to stick with it, and they couldn't wait for the numbers, and blah, blah. I was like, that's ridiculous, because I realized I had just done a count on that one to prepare for my presentation. I had no idea. And I sent it to him in his Twitter account. He went and sat down. I saw when he sat, and he pulled his phone out. He looked at his phone, and then I saw him retweet it. Actually, watched him do it from across the sort of the hall at this thing, and he retweeted it to his 30,000 followers or whatever. Because it was a count I had done showing how many people were using this bike lane already. So that gives you an idea of the immediacy and of if any of you use social media, you know that it's all about immediacy. But this is the combination of both immediacy, and then if you want, you can go and check the data, and if you really want, you can go and do your own count if you doubt it. Anyways, it's been used by a bunch of people. We've three different geography classes, a fourth-year traffic engineering class, a bunch of people in Adelaide, a bunch of people in all over Australia. The university, the Australian National University, and they all kind of used it in this sort of mainly to these ones are the ones who are using it for professional reasons. So they're using it because the data is quick to gather, and it's easier, and it's just it's less work basically. But once we do our bike count specific one, I think it's going to go a little bit bonkers, because what I'm going to do is contact all the different bicycle advocacy people around the world and get them to do a campaign, and that's when things start to really take off, I think, because those people like to have their cultural discussions, and I'm one of them. Anyway, so some of the things that are coming up. So this is the engineering students. I'm going to go to this other tool because I'm going to run out of time. And show you a bit about it, and then come back and show you how the students use it, because it's really special. So bear with me. Here's my other one.
We maybe see if there's any questions for Counterpoint.
Yeah, any questions on Counterpoint there before I skip tools? They're similar. They're similar, but they're quite different. So yeah.
I had a question about when you talked about iOS version. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. So people usually have one of two they have one of three. They have either an iOS, like an iPhone,
okay,
or they have an Android-based phone, or they have a Windows one. But let's pretend those people don't exist, because it's mostly Finland. And the iOS and we don't have an Android version. We have a web app which theoretically works on any phone. We did that so that people who wanted to could use it on any phone. But it's not quite as fancy as the iOS version, and there's some data sync issues. We pulled down data sync in the background between the two platforms in order to figure out some bugs. and we haven't put it back up yet. So for now, you can only, like if you have an Android phone and use the web app to do account, you can only download the data from there. You have to actually have the iOS for, like you have to have an iPhone to get at the iPhone data, is what I'm saying.
So,
and if you have, yeah, if you get that.
So the graphs like that you're showing, those you could only do with an iPhone for now.
No. What I mean is if you wanted to download the data. So it works the same way. It's just you have to, if you think about it, so whenever you have a website that's inputting information, it goes up to a server somewhere. The two different things speak different languages because they're different platforms, and they need to communicate with each other. We've just broken the communication for a bit. So I'm just giving you a heads up on that. It says that on Twitter and Facebook and stuff that, you know, if you're trying to, that for most people they don't notice that. The only reason that that causes an issue is if you're a whole bunch of people trying to look at each other's scores in the meantime, if you know what I mean.
I have a question. It's Anne. May I speak in French?
Oui, oui.
Oui. Je voulais savoir si vous aviez une façon pour compter à l'intersection.
Ah oui.
Parce que là, on compte. Nous, on a un outil qui est vraiment comme le vôtre, mais on le fait sur papier. C'est l'entrée de données après peut être longue, mais on compte sur une ligne au milieu d'un trottoir, par exemple. Mais là, on nous demande souvent de compter à une intersection. Je voulais savoir si vous aviez quelque chose pour ça.
Réponse courte, on travaille là-dessus. Nous avons une partenaire prospective en Australie qui, eux autres, ils font ça pour les intersections. Et on a dévisé un système pour le faire. C'est un peu différent de ce qu'on a fait. Et probablement ça va prendre quelques mois avant que ça soit fini parce que ouais, on veut le faire. Courte réponse.
Ok, merci. J'ai une autre question. Je voulais savoir si avec l'application, il y a des outils d'analyse qui viennent, par exemple dans les firmes de génie. Ils veulent savoir c'est quoi l'heure la plus achalandée. Si on compte 3 heures, ils veulent voir c'est quoi l'heure la plus achalandée par période de 15 minutes. Est-ce que l'application vient avec une aide comme ça pour analyser les données?
Autre que le fait qu'on peut demander toutes les personnes qui nous suivent sur Twitter ou bien Facebook de partager quelque chose. Et ça, c'est quand même assez intéressant parce que, par exemple, on a des professeurs qui, c'est ça leur focus, qui sont là-dessus. Alors, ils peuvent partager des choses même avec qui sont plus intéressantes de ce qu'on pourrait écrire nous-mêmes. Et on peut partager certains, par exemple, templates pour le spreadsheet, mais ça vient pas avec. Lorsqu'on comment on dit, download le data, ça vient pas avec. Mais il y a des moyens. Et c'est pas si difficile. Ça dépend. On vise peut-être avoir un genre de rapport qui vient avec, et c'est ça que je crois que vous voulez là. C'est quelque chose déjà fait, genre, ou que ça demande bon le montant de, par exemple, petit sur bicyclette par heure, ou bien etc. Certains calculs là. On vise faire ça, mais pour l'instant non.
Okay, merci. Et une dernière question, est-ce que l'application fonctionne si on n'a pas de connexion? Est-ce qu'elle fonctionne hors ligne?
Premièrement, il faut qu'on trouve la place. Ça vient du database. Vous voyez?
Mm-hmm.
Sur la version iOS, oui, ça marche. Avec un web app, c'est pas tellement possible parce qu'un web app fonctionne avec l'Internet, n'est-ce pas? Comme tous les web apps, il faut que, mais le iOS c'est un app, alors ça existe sur votre téléphone. celui-là, il faut trouver, par exemple, le coin Young et Dundas, on trouve. Ensuite, on sort, on fait les choses. Ça peut fonctionner sans Wi-Fi. Et puis, prochaine fois qu'on retourne à Wi-Fi, on peut, ça l'envoie au database, si ça fait sens.
Ok, c'était mes 3 questions. Merci.
Ouais. De cette façon, il y a toujours des places pour, il y a toujours de la place pour les stylos puis le papier, parce que ça fonctionne toujours. Et je suis tellement, je comprends ça. C'est juste que c'est genre, comment on dit ça en français, the likelihood qu'un groupe de personnes va s'organiser pour faire ça dans les 2 secondes que ça prend de sortir son cellulaire pour simplement le faire. C'est ça qu'on cherche.
Oui, ça a l'air super efficace, là. C'est très intéressant comme outil.
Okay. D'autres questions or any other questions, and I keep going?
I don't have any questions, but I'm just really happy to hear you talk about this app because I had been researching it a little bit and looking into it as a potential tool that we could use in upcoming communities. Because we do pedestrian and cyclist counts, so we do sort of exactly just the classic pen and paper and following a methodology for that.
Yeah, and the nice thing is that, like, unless you have a plan for getting all that stuff up on the web and something, like, I think the real power here is doing a count now and then doing another one in a year, and not having to worry about, oh Jesus, who's that guy who I sent the spreadsheet? Did she upload the thing to the, you know? Once you're done, it's done, and you can forget about it. And next time you happen to be at that bus stop, you go, oh shit, you know what? That bike lane's in now. I wonder, you know? That's kind of, you know?
Totally.
Okay. So here's another thing that functions similar to this, but this one's aimed at teachers. So can you see the screen here?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is Winnipeg, lovely, beautiful, dark brown, freezing cold Winnipeg right now. And here is, so you see these 5 numbers here, 40, 40, 60, 70, 70. These are the total percentage of kids who walked or biked to that school when they did a hands-up survey. So, if you think about that, if you can imagine if you had, so this is Winnipeg right now, we have 17 schools total that have done this. Oh, there's one in Lorette. Yeah, that's right. I didn't even see that one on the map yet. That one's new. What they've done is they've put themselves on the map as to see sort of how walk bike friendly are their choices, but I think those choices have huge repercussions to the geographic area in which they are found, for example. So this is our starting point. This is the basic tool we've built so far. We've got a whole, this is sort of the top part of the iceberg, and the other 90% is still under the water. But we've got some really, really powerful stuff to go with this. But this is just the basic thing, and we've opened it up so people can try it out and use it and tell us what they think and stuff like that. We got 64 fourth-year traffic engineering students to basically test this out and bring it to 17 different schools around Winnipeg. They did probably about 80 hours of work on the school, all based on this stuff that took approximately 30 seconds of any given teacher's time to produce. So they started it from looking at the data of where the kids were coming from and what mode they chose to get there. This just shows the overall score, so the overall percentage. So in the case of Sergeant Park School, let's say, they got 48% are walking, 1% are biking. So they have a total score of 49, right? And there's the survey that they did at that school, just to give you an idea. Actually, I'm explaining that badly. I'm going to come back to what I was saying about knowing where the kids were coming and going from. That's actually step 2. So but forgive me. I'll show you how this works. But before I do, I'm going to have to sign in. So it looks a little bit different if we sign in. You can create your own there if you want. Oops. This is me. So my school is actually in Holland, because this is where I did a test a month ago. This is a real score of 98, and this is the real answers, which is really interesting. I was in an area of Holland where I was trying to find some kind of deviation, and you couldn't. So I have a teacher friend there, and he told me, you know what, you don't even have to survey. And I said, okay, please just prove it to me. Ask your kids how they got to school. And he's like, wow, I don't even really see why you're doing, you know. So anyways, he asked the kids, and then and yeah, he was right. 98% biked, and I was like, 98. Like some people must live like 2 feet away from school. There must be one kid who walked. He said, yeah, but they still bring their bike. Because then they have the chance to go around. And it started this big conversation because none of the kids could understand why they were being asked. They didn't understand why people in Canada wanted to know about this, and they started asking about Canada, and then he told them, well, he looked at the map and saw the numbers in Canada, and he's like, the kids were sad and wondering what's wrong with them and like why they wouldn't want to. And anyways, it started this whole discussion, and then the one girl had all these reasons figured out, and it was extremely charming to hear about that hour-long conversation that this generated. Just from, I said, please just do me a favor and ask your kids how they got to school. I want to know, and we'll make a school so that there's at least one. So this is kind of how this is supposed to work. So in the sense that it's relevant to you, but you can compare anywhere else in the world. So I don't know if there's any others or not. I haven't actually checked. Probably not. Because we just sort of launched it on Tuesday. But anyways, so there's that one, and there's the one in Holland at least. There's a few in Manitoba popping up. Yeah, there's mine. So anyways, you see how that works. So if I want to do a survey, this is what it looks. So I'm a teacher, I've signed in, whatever. I go like this. So, you know, and I mean, it should be fairly self-explanatory. When you submit the survey, yeah, I want to cancel this. When you submit the survey, it shows up here in the timeline, and that's your next day. And overall, it adds to this score. So it functions a little bit strange mathematically in the sense that if you've done a whole bunch of surveys, then the next time you do the survey, this thing only climbs slowly. But that's okay. That just encourages people to do more surveys once they've made progress. And if they want to not do any surveys because they're not making progress, well, that's a little bit shameful. But I don't think anybody would be induced to do that anyway. So the next step of this one is to, there's 2 next steps. So I'll come back to my presentation, and then I'll be done and we can discuss. The next step of this thing is to do a campaign. So we're going to do, hopefully as part of Winter Bike to School Day, do a big campaign in February where we try and get every school to do their count at the same time, and it counts towards this Winter Bike to Work Day thing, and kids versus adults. But just generally speaking, to do like a count during iWalk in October, a count during, and get everybody to do it all the same day, so that even if there's weather variation or stuff, at least people in the same city have no excuse. So you can kind of start to see what the built environment factors are around a given school in a given neighborhood. So I think what I would like to sort of get you to picture is, imagine if you could do all of Toronto's schools, which you can do quite easily if you get the agreement from the school division. We're going to do that here. And you get a score for every school around Toronto. Then you start to reveal some really, really important stuff about the quality of the built environment for walking and cycling specifically. Take that and compare that to Rotterdam or downtown Eindhoven, for example, or even better yet, somewhere in northern Sweden. Then you really, really start to get some important interactions happening. Our next steps for that particular project, and this is something else we've gone further ahead in terms of brute force spatial analysis that is a lot harder to put back into software programming than it is to just kind of do once or twice on paper, and that is to ask the kids at the same time where they were coming from by postal code, so that you can generate origin destination study maps, which really start to tell you lots about the built environment and which particular locations need some help to get kids coming to and from school, because it starts, you know, some big street starts to act as a huge barrier for walking, for example. In terms of where we are at, Counterpoint now has like a bajillion of these things all over the world, which is kind of cool. And I have no idea how people are using it. I don't actually care. You know, we set it up for them to do whatever they want with it, and I'm sure people are using it for all kinds of different things to justify this or that. We're going to try and do bike-specific counts. So you see there, you'll see there's gender, there's where they're biking, there's whether they're wearing a helmet or not, whether they're wearing lights or not. Intersection counts, like somebody asked, Anne asked, I think. We're going to do more languages. So the Danish Cyclist Federation is a partner in the Counterpoint app. We're going to try and get Finnish and Danish as soon as possible for the Bike Walk Roll, so that Bike Walk Roll we can get some sort of northern countries to compare with Canada, because it's Canada I care about most. We're going to have improved teams. We're going to have campaigns, like I was mentioning, more achievements. Something special for businesses, which is something I suggest you do on paper and try it out for us, and that is to do a door count at a business and ask the customers how they got there, and then share that information with the local business. I guarantee you it'll blow their minds. For pedestrians are always underestimated, always underestimated. You can never go wrong by collecting data at the door of a business and then telling that business owner how people got there. Anyways, we're going to make it all work together, and that's us and who's put it together so far. Thank you. Sorry, I think I went a little bit over there.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. And I think Jackie had told me that there's a French one in the works as well, a French translation.
Oh yeah, you bet. I forgot about that. I should probably mention that in this company. Yeah. No, there's a couple of people. I'm gonna do it eventually, if in partnership with folks at Velo Quebec, I think. And I feel like, yeah, there's a couple other people who have stepped up to do it in French. I'm sorry there isn't already a French one.
Yeah.
What I focusing on the software programming, so.
I had actually told her that if she was looking for a partner, we could be interested.
Oh, cool.
You're looking for a partner.
It's pretty easy. It's really easy, actually. It takes a couple hours. You just sit down with a spreadsheet, plunk it in, you're done. If you're a native French speaker, it's quite easy.
Mm-hmm. Great. Are there any questions for Anna?
It's Roxanne here. I'm in Calgary, Alberta, and really it sounds like a great program, and I'm interested in knowing, like, how have you, is it being promoted out here, or have you had people hear about it and express interest? Any of the cycling groups or the active and safe routes to school people out in this part of the country?
Which one do you mean, the Counterpoint app or the Bike Walk Roll?
Actually, either of them.
Right. Okay. So Counterpoint, there's actually a few in Calgary. There's one at 7th and there's one at 2nd and Stephen, I think. And do you know who Blanca Bracic is? You probably do.
Yes.
Yeah. So she's been speaking with me at a bunch of these conferences too. But I know lots of people in Calgary, and so there's some. Calgary is actually, interestingly enough, a leader in actually doing proper counts. The city of Calgary has staff that does their own counts, which is kind of cool. So, yeah, people are aware. There's some of it being used. Promoting Counterpoint, we didn't really have a budget for promotion. We've got a plan for that too, a little bit. We're sort of relying on word of mouth to get that out there. So, you know, try and use it for a project, I think, is the best thing. And as far as Bike Walk Roll goes, it's really only been online live since like last Tuesday. And already there's a school in Lorette there that I see just outside of Winnipeg that has done 3 of them, which is pretty cool. So I think it spreads fairly quickly. The other thing that the other thing is there's no limit to no like minimum limit to how many kids can participate in a survey for a school. And what I mean by that is that any given teacher can do it in their class for fun. So you don't have to. It doesn't have to be organized top down. Like
Right.
you know, like if I'm a teacher and I'm like, okay, kids, let's figure something out here. How'd you get here? You know, and then I can just walk down the hallway and say, hey, Joan, Jim, why don't you guys do it with me on Tuesday? We'll all do this. You know, so it works from both ends. So like, I'm not too worried about word spreading on that so much. We haven't built it because, again, so I don't know if any of you are familiar with software development, but the more things you build for software development, the more things go wrong. And they always go wrong. So we wanted to build something that's relatively bug-free for this to get it going. But one thing, we have a little bit of complicated things set up that we want to launch and try out is basically as soon as one person does one, they're prompted with all these things like, okay, invite your teacher friends. Okay, put it on Facebook. Okay, put it on Twitter, like this. That stuff should be its own sort of marketing campaign. Yeah, basically. And then I also think that once we get one city covered in these scores, that map alone will be referenced for so much planning stuff that I think it'll start to spread from there too.
Okay, great, thank you.
So feel free to use it. Basically, it's yours. Spread the word.
Yeah. Well, I'm connected to Safe and Active Routes to School program here in Calgary, and I think they'd be interested. And also, our mayor Nancy has been promoting, has had this walk cycling to school challenge since last year, and I'm thinking that he would jump on this, and his office to as a way to get schools involved and start tracking their progress.
Totally, yeah. Once the schools catch a hold of this, schools are extremely competitive, right? Ridiculously competitive, and if one school sees that the other school is even participating in something and they're not, no matter what it is, they'll be annoyed, and then especially if they think that they might have a higher score than them, they'll want to join up. So yeah, the best thing is to tell a couple principals about it, or even a superintendent is even better. I've shared a couple emails. There's sort of a cross-Canada group of school travel people, so I've shared the fact that it's soft launched so far. But yeah, by all means, just spread the word about it, and it should kind of multiply itself.
Absolutely will.
But so I think I see this as kind of like I honestly see it as critical, which is why I think it'll really succeed. Is that at some point this will be the baseline for any kind of neighborhood planning. It's shocking to me that it isn't already the baseline for neighborhood planning, because it like if you think about it, the evolution of the cul-de-sac, of the cut-through, of so many things in modern sort of neighborhood design, like from a traffic layout perspective, is actually already about schools a lot of the time. So when people started to demand cul-de-sacs in their own little private kingdom and stuff like that, they still made the little cut-throughs so that the shortest route was often to school. And then eventually they forgot about those and did away with them, and we've all seen the graphics on the internet about that. But schools are already the natural heart of any given neighborhood. So when for example, when Vittel Quebec is doing its school child plan, it's doing it at the neighborhood level already, and I really think that that's really important. And I think that if there's neighborhood planning happening and you don't know what is happening in the schools in the neighborhood, then you basically failed at neighborhood planning. So I'm sort of hoping that going forward, at least in Winnipeg, we're actually going to have that integrated as the way that the city itself does its own work, so that you kind of have to. And then if you ever want, you just contact the schools and say, hey, please, we did some changes. Can you do a quick, couple weeks of surveys? We'd appreciate it. And they'll always say yes, because it gives them something easy and an easy way to contribute to this whole process.
And I'm guessing there's no, it's all just self-reported, and there's no like sign up at the beginning that you agree to follow a certain methodology to the best of your ability or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about this is that compared to a regular origin destination study, kids don't really lie, at least not to their teacher. They really, not compared to adults. So I think methodology-wise, it's a lot more reliable than anything else out there. Because if you get a phone call from them saying for the origin destination study stuff, the thing that happens once every 5 years kind of thing in a city, everybody ran a marathon last Friday, they think, and didn't use their car, and went for a long romantic walk with their, when they didn't do any of those things, and they just drove to work. Whereas kids, when they're just asked that day whether they got there. So if you think about it in context with the other things, because what you're talking about is data validity, I think it's more valid than anything. It's also much quicker. So if you think about it, like those origin destination studies, Winnipeg's, we had one done in 2009. I still haven't seen the data. They had some problem with methodology, actually, and it cost, I think, $400,000, I think. This, theoretically speaking, could be done in Winnipeg for like the key indicator species as kids in sort of 3 emails and 35 seconds one morning for any individuals participating. So anyway, I'm pretty excited about it, and I think the data is by default valid, and it's like, because we don't have this information yet, and because it doesn't exist on the internet, it basically doesn't exist. It's all we have to go on.
And I meant more for the counterpoint.
Right. So counterpoint, the way we get to that question is, first of all, with the teams. So usually the people asking that question, it's not the person who's done the count, because if you've done the count, you know that if you do one, like I urge everybody to try it out right away. It's real easy. Download the iOS app if you have a phone. It's worth it if you have an iPhone. But you'll see, you're like, at one point you're like, oh, damn it, did I count that car? I don't know. Okay, I'll give it a tap, whatever. Anyways, but then there's so many things going by that you may be off by 0.5% for the cars, and this is if you're trying to be honest. So which most of the time somebody's sitting for somewhere 2 hours tapping on a phone. Like, if they're not being honest, then they're kind of a bit crazy. That's rarely going to happen. The only people who are going to ask those kind of questions are professional engineers who are relying on the data, right? Those people have the ability to create a team or just only count their own counts. So like right now, City of Winnipeg, for example, if they want to check like the counterpoints scores of individual locations, they can, but they'll be relying on the word of the people who did the counts, which is fine. They can go and do their own count at the same location at the same time to test it, and if it's a way off, then they can from then on never ever like trust any member of the public. But they can also then just look at their own score and see what it says, or have a team that's a closed loop, right? And again, when you compare it to the other ways of doing it, you have this for any other manual count, you still have the same issue. And then with automatic counters, you have the issue that automatic counters, when you test automatic counters, you test them with manual counts in order to calibrate the automatic counters. So like, anyways, and there's lots of scenarios where automatic counters mess up, and in order to make sure that they're not messing up, they start with a manual count. So I think really all we're going for is the speed of information transfer. That's all we're really going for. I don't think it's got any less or any more data validity issues than any other methodology of doing it. It's just speeding everything up and making it so that regular people can participate in the process and learn from it.
Great. Thank you. Any final questions on bike, walk, roll, or counterpoint?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Oh, did I say that they're free? They're free.
Oh, that's even better.
They're free forever. Yeah, they're for you. The Heart and Stroke Foundation paid us to do it.
Wow.
Free. Yeah, we need to catch up to automobiles. So help us help you.
That's great. We work with a bunch of youth in one of our communities, and I know that they are always on their phones, and something like this would make it really easy for them to get involved and then also collect a ton of data.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And if you're working with little kids, you can do different things. Like you can ask them a question. Okay, you have this app. You say, okay, well, how does snow affect, you know? And then they gotta wait for a day when there's a snow or not and see, you know, what's the difference between morning and nighttime on this street? What's the difference between lunchtime and an hour before that? And you can do a 5-minute count and get something interesting, because kids have short attention spans. Getting them to do a 2-hour count would be kind of fascist, I think. I wouldn't do that to a little kid. It takes a lot of concentration. And also, if you're doing this as an adult and you want to test it out, the other thing that I didn't really mention about Counterpoint, but there is an art to choosing your locations. So mine are almost exclusively at pubs with a patio, south-facing patio. And then I'll set up a counterpoint there, because I might as well set up the next person who's going to do a count nicely. So think about that, and think about your own neighborhood, and think about something that you care about. And I would suggest doing a count there to start, because that's how it really will work. It's not the stuff that you're doing for work, but the one that you're interested in knowing, being an expert in, like kind of in perpetuity.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Anders, and I'm sure it'd be okay if I shared your email if anyone has any further questions while they're using the app. Or...
Oh yeah, of course. If you have any questions on how to use it, like right now I'm running both the Facebook and Twitter accounts for this. Mm-hmm. If you think, you know, this really sucks and it broke and it ruined my life and it ruined our project, put that on Facebook so that everybody can see it and we can talk it through and we can figure out what is the problem and stuff, because it helps. Also, our software developer folks are also on there. Do everything in public. It's the new way to do things. Do everything in public, then people trust you, and people can join in, and other people can answer your question, not just me. Like this kind of thing. Join that community is the best way to do it. Or you can ask me also, and yeah, share my email. You can ask me anything too. But.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And
my pleasure. Sounds like you guys are doing really interesting work too. So I'm interested to see what comes out of it also.
Yeah, I think all of us have the potential to use this tool like in the near future. So we'll let you know.
Put it on Twitter. Put it on Twitter. If you do it, put it on Twitter. I can't wait to see it.
Okay. All right. Thank you,
okay.
everyone.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you.